Georgie Cooper might seem like the dumb one in the family. The kid who cheated on tests, dropped out of high school, lied about his age to a woman 10 years older than him, and got arrested for smuggling cigarettes across state lines. But there's a lot more to him than that. Behind that mullet and that used car salesman confidence, there's a guy who fixed engines adults couldn't figure out, who built a sales business before he could legally vote, and who held an entire family together while his genius brother was across the country collecting awards. To truly get Georgie Cooper, we need to look at the moments that made him who he is and see how his need to prove himself turned the kid everyone underestimated into the person the family couldn't survive without. So sit back, grab a snack, and let's take a look at the story of Georgie Cooper. Here's the thing about growing up in the Cooper house. There was a ranking system, and everybody knew where they stood. Sheldon was the genius. That was established before Georgie even had a chance to figure out who he was. His 9-year-old brother showed up in his high school classes, and from that moment on, Georgie became the other one. The older brother who wasn't special, and the show doesn't let you miss it. In the very first episode, 14-year-old Georgie is already embarrassed that his little brother is entering his grade. George gives him a locker room pep talk because his son is already deflated. He's already the kid who can't keep up. He plays football, scores a touchdown in season 1, and you'd think that would be his moment. But nobody cares, because Sheldon's mathematical contribution to the team is what the school is talking about. Georgie literally puts points on the board with his body, and the attention goes to the kid who did it with a calculator. And it keeps going. In season 1, episode 9, Georgie's struggling in math so badly that he writes answers on his shoe just to survive a test. Meanwhile, Sheldon is tutoring him. His younger brother is his teacher. And you know what's wild about that scene? While Sheldon is explaining math, Georgie turns around and teaches Sheldon how to construct a convincing lie. Sheldon can do equations, but Georgie understands how people think, what they'll believe, and what makes a story hold up under pressure. The show plays it as a joke, but it's actually the first time you see that these two brothers are intelligent in completely different directions. Then there's season 1, episode 10, where something smaller but honestly more important happens. Mary is upset about Sheldon, and the family dinner is tense and quiet. Missy names the awkwardness, Meemaw changes the subject, and Georgie jumps in to keep the new conversation moving. A 14-year-old reads that the room needs help and contributes without being asked. Nobody thanks him for it. Nobody even notices. But that's the point. The things Georgie is good at are the things this family treats as invisible. The problem is that only one direction of intelligence counts in this house. Mary literally calls Georgie and Missy dumb as soup in The Big Bang Theory. And in season 2, when Sheldon and Missy get selected for a university twin study, Georgie isn't even eligible because he's not a twin. But here's the thing, the result is still the same. The family spends weeks comparing Sheldon's and Missy's abilities, and the oldest child is once again outside a conversation about who in this household is smart. But here's the thing about being told you're the dumb one your entire life. It does one of two things. It either breaks you, or it forces you to build a completely different scoreboard. And what the Cooper family never realized is that while they were watching Sheldon collect certificates, Georgie was quietly building proof that their entire measurement system was broken. The evidence was right there the whole time. They just weren't looking at the right stuff. The first real crack in the dumb kid label happens in a garage, and it's one of the most underrated scenes in the whole show. Season 2, episode 8. George's truck has a problem. Georgie takes one look at it and says it might be the thermostat. Then, Herschel notices that Georgie can locate tire punctures without using the usual soapy water test. Herschel, the garage owner, is genuinely impressed. George is proud. And the reason this scene matters so much is because it's the first time an adult outside the family looks at Georgie and sees ability instead of a last name that belongs to someone smarter. Herschel gives him work on the spot. And it turns out Georgie had actually been paying attention in his auto repair class, which nobody in the family expected because they'd already decided he didn't pay attention to anything. And this wasn't the first time George and Georgie bonded through ordinary domestic work. Back in season 1, episode 12, they're stuck doing the laundry together, and George bets that Georgie will be married before he's 25. The show drops that line like it's a throwaway joke, but it's actually foreshadowing the next 5 seasons of Georgie's life. George understood something about his oldest son that nobody else in the family did. that Georgie was going to grow up fast, for better or worse. But mechanics is only part of it. Mima teaches Georgie and Missy how to haggle in Season 2, and something clicks for Georgie that doesn't click the same way for anyone else. By Season 3, Episode 1, he takes that haggling lesson and turns it into a real sales operation. He asks George for investment money, buys 52 Texas snow globes from a closing card store, negotiates the marked total of $55.25 down to $35, goes door to door, gets rejected, changes his clothes, adjusts his pitch, creates a 2 for $8 bundle, and comes home with a profit. That is a complete sales cycle. He handled investment, sourcing, negotiation, rejection, adaptation, packaging, and closing. He's like 16 years old, and nobody in the family says, "Oh wow, maybe Georgie's actually smart." They just treat it like a cute side project. And then Dale hires him at the sporting goods store. Georgie works his way into being trusted enough that Dale leaves him in charge. The store gets robbed, and yeah, Georgie tries to cover the loss with his own money because he feels responsible. But he'd also left the register unsecured and mishandled the aftermath. Dale fires him while angry over his breakup with Mima, and Mima takes Georgie's side. Eventually, Dale cools down, apologizes, returns the money, and gives Georgie his job back. And honestly, that teaches a more interesting lesson than just life is unfair. Georgie made a real mistake, took responsibility imperfectly, and earned another chance by not giving up on himself. Meanwhile, by Season 4, the gap between the brothers becomes undeniable. Sheldon graduates from high school, while Georgie is still the older sibling who can't get through it. The family sees that split as proof that Sheldon won and Georgie lost, but there's something they don't understand yet. None of what I just told you matters if you stop here. Because understanding why Georgie eventually becomes the most important person in this family requires you to see what happens when all of that charm and hustle and salesmanship runs without any kind of moral filter. These skills he built are real, but they come with a massive blind spot, and that blind spot nearly destroys him. Georgie's practical intelligence had a flaw baked right into it, and the flaw is pretty simple. He got so good at reading people and talking his way through situations that he stopped being able to tell the difference between using that ability and abusing it. Season 5 is where it all goes sideways. He drops out of school during his senior year to focus on sales. And look, in hindsight, the guy ends up building the most successful tire chain in Texas, so it worked out. But at the time, that's a 17-year-old with no diploma, no backup plan, and complete confidence that he doesn't need one. That's not smart. That's just lucky that it landed. Then he goes to work in Mima's illegal gambling room. And again, this is where the show does something really honest with his character, because it doesn't pretend that Georgie's work ethic and business instincts make him a good person. They make him a competent person. Those are two very different things. He's great at the job. He runs the operation well. He solves Mima's business problems to the point where she starts treating him like a genuine partner rather than her underachieving grandson. But the operation is illegal, and being talented at something illegal still makes it illegal. And then there's Mandy. This is the part that you can't skip past or soften, because it's genuinely bad. In Season 5, Episode 11, 17-year-old Georgie meets Mandy, and he tells her he's 21. She initially lies too, says she's 25 when she's actually 29, but she comes clean relatively fast. Georgie doesn't.
I'm actually 29.
He keeps the lie going through several dates and encounters. He maintains it deliberately through multiple episodes, knowing exactly what he's doing. And in Season 5, Episode 17, Mandy's questions about his yearbook finally force him to admit that he's 17. She throws him out, and then later in the same episode, she tells him she's pregnant. The lie doesn't collapse because of the pregnancy. It collapses because Georgie ran out of ways to maintain it, and the pregnancy lands on top of an already devastating confession. And here's what makes it worse. The fallout doesn't just hit Georgie, it hits the whole family. His parents find out. Dale pushes Georgie to tell George about the pregnancy. The scandal follows Missy into school and church. In Sunday school, she punches a boy who mocks the family, and Georgie tells her he's not worth getting in trouble over. That's a 17-year-old who knows he messed up badly enough that he doesn't even want his sister fighting for him anymore. Season 5 ends with Georgie and Mima getting arrested at the border with 400 cartons of undeclared cigarettes. Season 6 opens with them still in custody, and Georgie's brilliant suggestion is that they escape through a window. George posts bail, and Georgie, the kid who just got booked for smuggling, looks at his disappointed father, and says he hopes to be a dad like him someday. That's the whole contradiction of Georgie Cooper in one scene. Irresponsibility and sincere aspiration sitting right next to each other.
I hope I'm as good a dad as you are.
Don't try to butter me up.
So this is where you'd normally expect me to say, but then he turned it all around. And he does, eventually. But the turning point isn't the arrest, and it isn't his parents finding out about the pregnancy, and it isn't even Mandy. The single biggest thing that forces Georgie Cooper to stop running from consequences is a person who can't even talk yet. But to understand why Cece changed everything, you need to see just how badly Georgie fails when she actually shows up. Because people love to tell the story of Georgie becoming a great dad. What they leave out is that he was a disaster first. And honestly, the disaster is the important part. Here's what nobody tells you about Georgie becoming a father. He was terrible at it, like genuinely, measurably bad at almost every individual task the show throws at him.
Kid ain't even born yet and I'm already a terrible father.
You're not terrible.
It starts before Cece even arrives. In season 6, episode 3, Mandy's electricity gets cut and her rent isn't paid, and Georgie shows up to help. He accidentally walks into the wrong apartment and has to de-escalate a situation with an armed neighbor. That's the kind of problem that doesn't have a textbook answer. You either figure it out in the moment or you don't, and Georgie figured it out. Then, in season 6, episode 6, he trades his Mustang for a family car. And that sounds like a small thing, but think about who Georgie is at this point. This is the kid who defined himself through stuff, through clothes, through sales, through looking like someone who's made it. The Mustang is part of that identity. He gives it up because a pregnant woman and an incoming baby need something practical, not something cool. That trade is one of the first times Georgie voluntarily gives up something he wants because someone else needs something different. But then Cece actually arrives and the wheels come off. Season 6, episode 14. Georgie handles the car seat the way Georgie handles everything. He throws money at it. He buys the most expensive one available. Top of the line, can't figure out how to install it. And then he panics.
I couldn't even install a car seat.
Great, you can drive me to my launch party.
He actually drives away from the hospital with Sheldon in the car. Sheldon talks him into turning around, and while Georgie drives back, Sheldon works out the installation. The genius solves the car seat while the practical brother couldn't even stay in the parking lot. Then Cece is born, and the reality of being responsible for a newborn hits immediately. On the drive home, Georgie crawls along at about 15 miles per hour because he's terrified of putting her in danger. Later, he and Mandy struggle to soothe her, and Sheldon unexpectedly quiets her for a moment with Soft Kitty. So now the guy who's supposed to be the hands-on, figure-it-out Cooper is watching his little brother calm the baby he couldn't. Season 6, episode 17. It's Georgie's 18th birthday. He's out on a date, and he leaves early because he wants to be with Mandy and Cece instead. Then he proposes. On the same night, he's legally an adult for the first time. He chooses to commit to the family he accidentally created as a minor. That's a wild sentence, but it's what happens. Season 6, episode 19, he decides he needs to be the sole provider. Mandy wants to go back to work, and Georgie basically tells her she shouldn't. Then, because he apparently hasn't made enough questionable choices for one episode, he brings Cece to the gambling room while he works. An actual infant in an illegal gambling operation. That is a real thing that happens. And in season 7, episode 9, Audrey, Mandy's mother, tells him that Cece is going to learn how to talk from him, and if he keeps speaking with bad grammar, that's what his daughter is going to pick up. And yeah, Georgie pushes back at first. Most people would. But the criticism gets through to him. He starts working on his speech because he wants Cece to learn better habits from him than the ones he grew up with. And that's the thing that separates this version of Georgie from the kid who lied about his age and ran cigarettes across the border. It's not that he suddenly became competent. He didn't. He failed at the car seat, panicked, and literally drove away from the hospital, struggled to soothe the baby, tried to control Mandy's career, and used an illegal business as a daycare. But after every single one of those failures, he did something the old Georgie never would have done. He came back. He still panicked and made excuses, but he increasingly returned, accepted what went wrong, and kept doing the work. He told Mandy they were both inexperienced parents who would figure it out together, and then he actually tried to figure it out. Not perfectly and not quickly, but consistently, which is the thing that matters. That's not academic intelligence. It's not street smarts either. It's something the Cooper family never even had a word for, and honestly, it's something the show is still building a case for when the worst possible thing happens. Because everything Georgie learned, every failure he recovered from, every small moment where he chose to stay instead of run, all of it gets tested one final time. And this time, nobody gets a second chance. In 1994, near the end of the final season, George Cooper Sr. suffers a heart attack and dies. And the family falls apart. But before we talk about what happens after, you need to understand what happens during. And you also need to understand what happened right before, because it connects everything. In Season 7, Episode 8, Georgie applies for a bag boy position at a grocery store. That's it. The kid who ran a gambling operation and sold snow globes and worked at a sporting goods store walks into a grocery store and applies for the most basic job available because he wants to prove to Audrey that he's serious about supporting her daughter. Jim, Mandy's father, sees what he's doing and offers him work at his tire shop instead. Georgie promises to work hard, and that tire shop, that random-looking job in the final season, is the most obvious connection to the Dr. Tire chain he builds as an adult. The whole thing starts because a kid was desperate to show his mother-in-law he wasn't a joke. And then George dies, and all of that preparation gets stress-tested in the worst possible way. In Season 7, Episode 13, Georgie is the one who handles the logistics. He retrieves his father's suit. He tries to mediate the fight between Sheldon and Missy, because even while he's grieving, he can see that the family is fracturing and somebody needs to hold it together. Before the service, he stands at the open casket and tells his father he has everything under control. "I won't let you down."
Won't let you down, Dad.
He later gives his eulogy, and in it, he says that his dad always supported him, which, if you've been paying attention, is a huge statement because George's support wasn't always obvious. George tried to tell Georgie he was proud back in Season 3, and Georgie completely misread the conversation because he thought George was asking him to pay for the broken air conditioner. These two men were never great at saying what they meant to each other. And now, one of them is dead, and the other one is standing in front of a room full of people trying to put it into words for the first time. During Mima's speech, Missy asks why everyone is laughing, and Georgie tells her it's because they loved their dad.
Because I love him.
Kinda kept to myself, but I wasn't always.
And then the show does the thing that makes this entire 7-season arc land. While Sheldon is still at home preparing to leave for Caltech, Georgie notices how badly Mary is deteriorating. She's crying, she's praying, and something about it scares him. So he calls Mima for help. He's already monitoring the family before his brother has even packed his bags. The series ends with Sheldon arriving in California, saying he's exactly where he's supposed to be. And the whole time, Georgie is back in Texas with the family that still needs someone to hold it together.
I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
The Big Bang Theory gives us the broad outline of what happens next, and Georgie and Mandy's first marriage fills in the years between the two shows. In Season 11, Episode 23, adult Georgie sits across from adult Sheldon and tells him the truth. After George died and Sheldon left, Mary was a mess, and Missy was a struggling teenager, so Georgie had to look after both of them. He reminds Sheldon that he looked after him at school, drove him around, and apologized to people when Sheldon was rude. And the family's spare money went towards Sheldon's education, leaving Georgie to work for the money he needed to build his own future in the tire business. He did all of that while Sheldon was across the country, eventually dismissing Georgie and Missy as mouth-breathing idiots. And that right there is the thing that makes Georgie's story hit so hard. All of that work was invisible. Sheldon's achievements were celebrated publicly. He got degrees, awards, academic positions, and eventually a Nobel Prize. Every time Sheldon succeeded, people applauded. But so much of Georgie's sacrifice went unseen by the person who benefited from it most. Nobody told Sheldon about the work and the cost of keeping the family going while he built his career. Sheldon's response to hearing all of that? He says he's sorry. For perhaps the first time, Sheldon recognizes how much of Georgie's sacrifice he never saw, and he apologizes for failing to consider what the rest of the family endured. And that scene makes the show's larger point clear. Intelligence is not the same thing as awareness, responsibility, or dependability. Georgie didn't become smarter than Sheldon. Nobody is saying that. Sheldon's IQ is still 187, and Georgie was never academically gifted in the way his brother was. But the Cooper family had this definition of smart that was so narrow it only had room for one person. And that definition completely missed the guy who could fix things, sell things, read people, raise a kid, hold a grieving mother together, and build a business from absolutely nothing. The family didn't need a genius. They needed someone who would show up, take the hits, do the unglamorous work, and stay, even when staying was the hardest option available. And the only person who did that was the kid they all called dumb. If you want more Cooper breakdowns, this one's next.